it. The world was kind of a little bit tricked by the martial arts, because there was no way to really disprove it back then. It was just like there was no internet. So it was like whoever the guy was that they put on the cover of Black Belt magazine was going to be the guy now.
Hi, this is the Social Gello with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Gello with Angelo show.
What's up, and welcome to another episode of Social Gello with Angelo podcast. Oh man, there we go. There it is. Some TV magic there. Got my background set up. I'm here with Mike. I just said his name too. Bidwell.
Bidwell. There you go.
I just said his name without there. Mike Bidwell. You might not know Mike from his first or last name, but you might know him from BJJ After 40, the page he runs on Facebook, which, as some of you may know, on my podcast, I'm talking a lot about training after 40. It's kind of a thing. I'm 43, but I started talking about this when I was 38 because I started feeling old. It's not about the age, it's about the mileage. And if you've been doing MMA or martial arts for a long period of time, over 10 years, it'll catch up to you pretty quick. So his page caught my eye when he started talking about BJJ After 40. So I'm here talking about Mike, about training after 40, and what inspired him to get the page together. And let's just open up with that, man. What got you going? What made you want to start a page for people after 40?
So when I'm 56 now. So when I was in my early 40s, I was a brown belt in Jiu-Jitsu, had been a brown belt for 13 years. And that was kind of my first sort of claim to fame, I guess, if you will, was that I was a brown belt for such a long time. I started Jiu-Jitsu in about 1995, got my brown belt in 2001, and then got my black belt in 2014. So I had this huge span. And so when I eventually kind of had my breakthrough at 42, I had lost like 50 pounds. I got in really great shape, started competing again, had a little bit of success with that, really caught the eyes of my instructor. And it wasn't like I had one instructor the entire time. I'd actually moved and relocated. So I was training the entire time, but I was also kind of caught on a hamster wheel too, where, in jiu-jitsu, if you relocate and start with a new instructor, it's kind of like a courtship in a weird way. I know it sounds kind of a weird way of saying it, but with a lot of instructors, especially when you're talking like back in the day, in the early 2000s, that kind of thing, it really kind of was a courtship. Like you weren't going to walk into someone else's school and they're going to go, "Oh, you're a brown belt. Great. I'm going to give you a black belt in the next year." It was every time that I moved, it was like starting over again and again. So when I finally had my breakthrough, lost some weight, got in shape, did the whole thing, got my black belt in 2014, there was a little video that came out about my black belt test, and that kind of caught a lot of people's eyes. And it really got me thinking like, wow, man, like I was a brown belt for such a long time, and I was injured in that time frame quite a bit. And a lot of that had to do with me just not being in great shape. Like I was doing jiu-jitsu, but I was like 50 pounds heavier than I am right now and not feeling good when I'm training, constantly injured, my body breaking down. So after I got my black belt, I really felt like, honestly, like I wanted to get back to jiu-jitsu. I wanted to get back to something that was like so meaningful to me. And it was the BJJ After 40 group. And that's when I kind of had the impetus to start that group. And it's just taken on a life of its own. And so there's, that we have a group on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and all the good stuff. Yeah.
You say back in the day, I'm going to say, I don't know, man. Like I'm from a different generation. Like I was saying off camera, I'm 43.
Yeah.
And I'm a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 18 years.
Yeah. Dude, that sounds familiar because that was my journey. That was my journey, dude. I was on record pace at first. I went from white to brown belt. I went from 95 to 6 years. I was a brown belt. And it wasn't because I was like some superstar, but I'd already been doing martial arts for a long time and was familiar with grappling. I wasn't great at it. I didn't know a lot. But the guys that I trained with, Hoist Gracie caught our eye in 1993. And even before that, we were interested in ground fighting. We saw that the need for that in our martial arts training. So we were already interested in grappling. So I was on like this record pace to get my black belt. And the sucky part about it, like for me at least, was, during that time frame of 13 years as a brown belt, I saw guys that I got my brown belt in 2001. I had guys start as white belt in 2001. And then you probably seen this too, go to black belt before I got my black belt. And like, you're super psyched for them and happy for them. But then you're just like, God, dude, I don't know that I'm ever going to get a black belt. Maybe I'm just going to be a brown belt forever. And, you know, and so kind of that, and that was part of it too, dude. I would be throwing like a pity party for myself. And, you know, I'd meet people, you meet someone in jiu-jitsu and they're like, oh, you're a brown belt. How long you been training? How long you been a brown belt? And you're just like, oh, I've been a brown belt for 10 years. I'm going to be a brown belt forever. I'm going to be the ultimate sandbagger, you know, shit like that. So, and I think so part of that, so the truth there is like shifting your mindset, because you can easily get stuck on that hamster wheel of like, I want something different, but I'm not doing different. You know, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just on that hamster wheel. It's like, you know, I'm not in great shape. I'm not like doing the things that I need to do on the mat. You know, I'm training because jiu-jitsu, you can kind of like at brown belt level, you can train and not be in great shape. You can kind of be in shitty shape and maybe your rolls aren't going to be fun and you might get banged up, but you could still roll and do it. And that's like kind of this weird downside of jiu-jitsu is that you could get away with just, you know, not being in great shape and still rolling.
And then the culture is changing. Like that's the other crazy part. Like, so when I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I was 25 and that was bad. My math is not that doing MMA did not help my math skills.
Math is hard.
Math is hard. Math was hard before getting punched in the head. You know what I mean? So
right. Like, it's even harder now, dude. Trust me, we get older too, dude. The memory kind of goes to shit a little bit too, you know?
So yeah, we go back 15 years. We go back 15 years from 2025. So we're looking at about what 2005 or so. I probably fucked up that up, but either way, around that time is when I started getting into it. I came from a similar background, different martial arts. I come from MMA and stuff.
Nice.
And so yeah, like that thing that you just mentioned, like the people you trained with, right? You keep moving around. I moved around a lot. I think, and I'm not. And you look at it then. Back then, I've talked to people on the show before. Like back then, in the early 2000s, in the 90s, you got in before I did. It was rare to find someone who was a purple belt in the States.
Right.
Like that was like, they didn't exist. Right.
No, exactly.
Like, oh my gosh, a purple belt. That was woo. But like, as the culture has shifted, now like it's become a mainstream martial art. That's what I would say. Like,
it was like the secret club back then. And there was something kind of cool about that. Like I even like, you know, starting like pre-2000s, and same thing with you, because you were early adopter too. You know, I remember knowing kind of at the time is like, we're doing some dope ass shit that like everybody else isn't doing, almost to a point where we were kind of like arrogant about it. When I went back to, I had a school at the time, you know, I had my own martial arts school at the time, and I was teaching like this kind of weird mix of everything. You know, you mentioned Kenpo, right? I was sort of like on my own weird path of that. Like I started out as a teenager doing traditional martial arts, started in Taekwondo. I kind of felt like it reached sort of a certain limit. You know, once I got my black belt, it was like, oh, I need the next thing. And I went to a boxing gym and I started doing boxing, and then I started kickboxing, and I got my black belt in Kenpo. And then to me, the next stage was like the ultimate martial arts, and it was in my town, was ninjutsu. So I started training with the ninjutsu instructor, and I got my black belt in ninjutsu in 1999. So I kind of felt like, you know, but when I experienced jiu-jitsu the first time, and the way that I experienced it the first time was, I had my school at the time. One of my training partners called me and said, listen, I just signed us up for this. At the time, it was like no holds barred fighting, like an NHB match. So he had signed us up for this thing, and it sounds like a movie, like there's going to be a $10,000 prize, and they're going to bring in all these fighters and blah, blah, blah. And so anyway, I ended up facing a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, and I lost the decision. I didn't get my ass kicked. We went for like 15 minutes, and then we had a 15-minute overtime. And it was a good kind of back and forth, but I definitely got when I look at it now, it's like I kind of got my ass handed to me on the ground. Like he was mounting me and position on me, and I just didn't know what I was doing. And the next day we went down to a jiu-jitsu school nearby. They invited everybody down. And then I really experienced jiu-jitsu on the mat. And I was like, wow, I was obsessed with it. So I went back to my school at the time where I was doing like ninjutsu. And I was like, you know what, guys, like, I don't want to do ninjutsu anymore. I don't want to do all the other stuff that we were doing. I just want to do this jiu-jitsu thing now. And everybody went and bought gi tops, and we got a few more extra mats. And that was kind of like the beginning of it for me, you know?
And so and I think that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. Like, and I think that, again, the culture shift. Now I meet people now that only have done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Like,
right.
They jump in and that's all they've done. And if you mention any other art, they're almost arrogant. Oh, yeah, I was too. I'll admit, when I was younger, I was a little, like you said, that whole arrogance, like, hey, I know I can out grapple you, right? So, like, but you see
Right.
the same kind of thing where the culture has shifted, and now you have people who only done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They've never done any striking. So I'm out in Japan,
Oh,
and
cool.
I bumped into a national champ, and the dude's never he's a national champ in Japan, but he's never done any type of striking or MMA. Like
Oh, wow.
if you ask the guy, he'll do some striking, but he's never competed in MMA, never wanted to compete in MMA. And since he's coming from a Japanese mindset from judo to Brazilian jiu-jitsu,
Mm,
his idea is Brazilian jiu-jitsu is a sport. And I got into the Brazilian jiu-jitsu sports side of things, and he's very meticulous about that stuff. So it's just kind of interesting to
yeah.
see that shift. I always say, like, there's the way Americans view martial arts and self-defense, and then there's the way other countries do like the same thing, and their mindset coming in, and then time
Yeah.
changes the culture as well, which is really
And I like having like be grounded in some self defense. So like in my academy, we teach Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, but like I cannot ignore my background. I can't be like, well, I never did striking. How could I not look at that as not being a part of like what they need to learn? Like the one thing that always drove me crazy would be I'd grab a blue belt sometime, and I'm teaching somewhere that it wasn't my school, and I'd ask them to be an uke, and I'd be like, hey, throw a punch. And they just would throw the craziest looking thing ever, you know what I mean? Or not, and it doesn't have to be a perfect punch, but it's got at least, how do you know how to throw a punch, dude? Like, I don't know how someone would get to that level and not have like a basic foundation of striking. My students do not need to be kickboxers. They don't need to be MMA fighters. They're all like super normal people. And I have a lot of middle-aged people that train with me. So, but I still require them to learn the basic foundations of striking. They need to know what a punch looks like, how to react against it. They need to know the basics of it, or I feel like I'm doing them a disservice. And it's no judgment against anybody who teaches otherwise. That's just my personal opinion. And I feel like I want my students to at least be able to go out into the world. Like if I'm going to send them out there into the world and kick them out, right? Like they got to know some basics, and I always think, and I say my students, and there's no ownership there, but when someone trains under me and I give them the essence of me, they're going to become their own martial artist, but they're going to get a little bit of essence of me. Well, that came with like traditional martial arts. I got 3 other black belts outside of BJJ, and those hold merit to me because there were great lessons in them. They weren't perfect. They were incomplete martial arts systems, but at the time, everything was incomplete. And now you're seeing the pendulum kind of circle back around in a weird way where you start to look at jiu-jitsu sometimes and you're like, it looks incomplete now, like in a weird way. Like, people don't want to do strikes. They don't want to have a self-defense foundation. They don't want to learn takedowns. They just want it to magically appear on the ground because that's just the fun part for grapplers. You know what I mean? Like takedowns kind of suck, right? Like they're kind of hard and it's hard on your body and it's not easy.
especially over 40.
Yeah, especially over 40. But there's a way to do that too. And I don't think you need to be an expert at that. So the way that I look at takedowns, we do takedowns just about every class. We practice takedowns. We don't slam each other. We're doing them controlled. I don't have students like starting grappling matches on their feet. I will to a certain degree. Like I'll say, all right, guys, we're going to slap and bump hands. One person's going to be the puncher. Other person's going to be the defender. But you're going to decide ahead of time who's throwing a punch, who's doing a takedown. And then you'll get them to the ground safely. And then you'll start your grappling match there. And we do that kind of thing all the time where they're learning at least the basics. They don't need to be a kickboxer anymore. They need to be a judo expert, but they need to know like some basics. They need to know how to do like a double leg takedown, a single leg takedown, a sotogari, drop seanagi. They need to know some basic stuff, but they don't have to be like world class at it either. But I do like the idea of you kind of got to earn your way to the ground. Like you can't just, get there magically.
Yeah. And I mean, for my program, I'll always, no, I still Kaji Kenpo back here. So,
Yeah.
I'll always have my Kaji Kenpo background. And for those of you who don't know, you can check out the What is Kaji Kenpo podcast I did with UFC coach John Hackelman. He explains a little more of that, how Hawaiian Kenpo got into the UFC. Check it out there. But I feel very similar. Like I come from that old school. I grew up in a rough neighborhood. I didn't get into martial arts because I thought it was fun, cool. The UFC wasn't even popular or around.
Right.
I've said this story way too many times, but since you haven't heard it, I'll do an abbreviated version of it. First time I saw a UFC fight was UFC 1. my friend who did karate, he was an older guy, and we had like this little fight club. We'd all get together and just train.
Oh,
This
cool.
is before I started doing Kenpo. So like I got jumped. That's what got me into martial arts. I got jumped by a
Yeah.
local gang, and I figured out that no matter how much of a pacifist I wanted to be, I'm gonna have to learn how to fight. So me and my cousin just started
Yeah.
working shit out. And one of the guys in our group was a karate instructor, Okinawan karate instructor. And I
Mm,
never formally trained with the guy. We'd just get together, he'd give us some drills,
sure.
and we'd spar. So either way, so we're doing like some karate stuff. And one day he's like, hey guys, I got this thing called UFC. You want to check it out? And we're like, all right, yeah, sure. And he grabs like this old VHC tape and he puts it in.
Dude.
It's all crackly. We're watching it. And for a second there, me and my cousin are watching it. Is this legal?
Right. No.
Is this legal? Did that guy just die? Like, what is going on? So that's the generation that I come from. It wasn't what the UFC is much more polished now. You know, and it's kind of hard to explain to someone now what that
Right.
looked like back
Well,
then.
it looks very different now too. Like I'm not, and you know, MMA. I like some of it sometimes, but I don't actually watch a whole lot of modern MMA. I watched the old school stuff. Like I like stuff from the Pride era. I actually got to be at Pride 4. My instructor at the time, Alon Goez, fought Sakuraba at Pride 4. And so at the time, you know, it was kind of a weird thing. It was one of those things where at the last minute, I bought a ticket, went to Japan, got to be ringside, got to see Hickson fight, Takada. It was like the cool, and I knew at the time it was the coolest thing in the world to me. I was just like, I couldn't stand it. Like every fighter was like right there. I was back in the locker room. Carlson Gracie Sr. was there, right there, like ringside with us. I mean, we were these two like goofy purple belts, you know, but we were like, this is the coolest shit ever. So, but when I go back and I watch old MMA, I have like such a fetish for it. Like I love watching it. Like it's my favorite stuff. Like the early UFCs, the early Pride stuff, where it felt more like, you know, skill versus skill, you know, style versus style. But now it's just like, you know, kind of, you know, some wrestling, some Muay Thai, and a little bit of grappling, which is fine. But like, it's interesting to see how it starts to come around in this weird, strange way where it becomes just a set of skills now.
Yeah. And so again, though, coming from that old school background, I think that's where you have more of that self-defense element coming in,
Right.
where you feel it's important. Hey, I think learning striking is important. I always tell my students, I'm like, all right, I run two different programs. I have the Kenpo program, and then I have the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program. And they always ask me, why do you split the two? I'm like, because you can't do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in 15 minutes. You need at least an hour
Sure.
to really let that set in. And then I'll have some students be like, well, I don't want to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Okay, well, that's your choice. I'm not going to force you. I'm not forcing anyone to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but you will notice a difference when you guys get to sparring, the students that are choosing to do the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class and the ones that are choosing to do more striking. And you're going to see a difference there. And if you want
Yeah.
to close that gap, you're going to need both. Now, the thing is, out here in Japan, when I came out here to started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like I said, I started when I was 25. I came to Japan after 5 years. I did that at the university. And then when I got to Japan, I was 30, and I
Oh,
got
wow.
into a no-gi. So my Japanese was very rusty. It was advertised as no-gi. Yeah. And then like
I feel like I know where this might be going. It sounds like a movie plot right now. I think I've seen this movie, dude. I've seen this movie.
It was advertised as no-gi. And
Oh,
it wasn't until 2 years ago that my Japanese got good enough to figure out that I was actually doing catch wrestling.
oh, interesting.
And I had, it was advertised as no-gi jiu-jitsu. It was like, oh, no-gi
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu at our MMA club.
Yeah.
And then I started taking on fights, doing MMA, and doing what I thought were no-gi grappling matches. And then when I translated, I'm like, oh, this doesn't say no-gi jiu-jitsu. My
Yeah.
coach told me no-gi jiu-jitsu, but this is catch wrestling. I translated, this is catch wrestling. This isn't Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Now,
Yeah.
what was interesting for them is that they call it submission grappling, or
Right.
submission grappling, as they say in Japanese. So years later, by the time I actually go back to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm not going to mention the school because it's a big school and trademarks and all that stuff, but it's a really big school. And if you're smart enough, and you look like you are, it's an internationally renowned martial arts academy.
Huh.
It's under the Gracie banner. And I'm not going to say which one it is, but they have a
Let me
very
think.
They have a very good curriculum, and yeah, we'll just leave it at that. I walked into that place, and by the time I walked into that place, now I have 15 years of grappling, as you would say in Japanese, and it was a really weird transition because they all acknowledged that obviously I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but it wasn't their Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And since I never earned a rank, 5 years at the university, back in the old school days, if you didn't do gi jiu-jitsu, they're not going to give you a rank. And I was only doing no gi because I was doing MMA and Kaju Kenpo. So they were like, all right, so I was a white belt for 5 years. Did I go do no gi with those? No, grappling. Well, it turns out I was in jiu-jitsu for another 10. So I come in 15 years later. Oh, well, there's an effect. And when they look at me, they say, okay, well, so what do you guys want to do? Like, I have a fight coming up. I need a place to roll. Oh, yeah, you can roll with us. I'm like, so what do you want to do? Well, normally we start our white belts. You can't spar until you get your third stripe. I'm giving away more and more who these people are, but this is how they worked.
I'm trying to figure out who it is.
You can figure it out. You can't do stand-up sparring until 3 stripes. And I said, okay, I appreciate the sentiment, guys, but like, I have a fight coming up. I need to do stand-up. Like, I need to work on takedown defense.
Sure, yeah.
So if we can work around that. And they said, yeah, that's cool. So after the first week, I tapped out a few of their black belts and a few of their brown belts even. And they were like, all right, we're going to do something. We're going to start you at 3-stripe white belt. I'm like, all right, cool. Sounds good.
Like, wow.
All right on. I appreciate you letting me spar. So that's my jiu-jitsu journey. I was 35.
Oh, wow.
Now I'm 15 years of grappling. I'm a 3-stripe white belt. And I really wasn't really concerned about competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I was more concerned again. Yeah. When I was doing MMA, I was more concerned about MMA than it was. And I wasn't trying to do a pro career, just enjoying it. So all that put together, what I saw out of it coming into Japan and the place that will remain unnamed, the instructor one day shows how to throw a kick. He said, okay, someone's going to throw a front kick and you're going to deflect it and come in with an elbow. And then when I saw him throw the kick, the dude could barely bring his leg to his hips. Like, he couldn't kick above his waist.
Right.
And I was just kind of like, it really threw me back. Because he's the instructor. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he couldn't kick above his waist. And I was just thinking to myself, like, well, what is going on? Because I know the first instructor I had when I was 25, that guy was fucking good. Like, he did MMA.
Right.
Like, he was skilled. Like, I had no doubt in my mind the guy could handle himself. But this guy, I was like, what happened to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Like, it's been 15 years. Yeah. And when I come back, I'm looking at
I think there's just different styles of it now. I think you have like almost like 2 styles in a weird way, and then probably something in the middle there. You have the self-defense guys who focus primarily on self-defense, and they'll say that they're right, and that's what you should do, and you need to know self-defense. And then you have the tournament kind of competition sport jiu-jitsu, flashy cool stuff, which I love. And you have those guys who'll say, I don't need self-defense. Like, what I'm doing is probably enough, or I live somewhere where I feel like I'm safe, that kind of thing. And I think the truth is always somewhere kind of in the middle. At least for me, it is. Maybe not for everybody else. And that, I feel like my students should know some striking, but they also don't need to like carry some crazy like self-defense burden their entire jiu-jitsu life, where it's like, they become those crazy dudes who are like, they got
that wouldn't work on the street. That wouldn't work on the street.
Right. Like, everything is about the street, and they're carrying like tasers and all these weapons and crazy shit, dude. And like, that's but hey, there's that version of jiu-jitsu, and then there's that other sport version. But there's also kind of guys like myself that are kind of in the middle that see the value of both. I think you can get to a point in your training where you can decide that for yourself. Like, you've got the basics of self-defense down. You've been practicing them. You know how to do it. But then you're like, sometimes you just want to sit down on the mat and like do barambolos and go upside down. But in your mind, you understand the difference between the two. I came out from the era back in the day that like, if you got mounted like in class during a roll when you were grappling somebody, it was like shame. It was like, holy shit, dude, you just got your face bashed into the ground, because in reality, dude, when that dude mounted you, he was punching your face into the ground. So dude, you don't ever want to get mounted again. So we had all this like like almost like fear about like bad positions. Like, holy shit, dude. Yeah, don't ever let anybody mount you. But that was kind of how it was. And dudes would give you shit in the locker room about like, oh, you got mounted, dude. That sucks. But nowadays it's like a different kind of mindset. But I also think it's okay to like dance between both. Like, maybe today I'm working on self-defense and I'm thinking about my rolling from a self-defense mindset. I'm going to block. I'm going to be very mindful of when I'm in position. I'm going to use my frames. I'm going to keep my face covered. I'm not going to end up in shitty positions where, someone could dominate with striking. And then maybe there's another day where you're just like, I'm not going to worry about any of that shit. And I'm just going to have fun and go upside down and close my eyes and just do weird ass shit,
I mean, spider guard is fun. It fucks
right.
up your fingers, but it's a good time.
Right. So sometimes like you might be like that. You're like, I'm just going to play like some fun gi games and do some cool lapel shit and maybe not worry about it. Or you might be like, I'm going to treat the gi today like it's actually like clothing. And how could I use that like in a real scenario? Like if I live somewhere where people do wear jackets and it is cold outside, and I am thinking about how I could utilize the gi as a real world kind of thing too.
Yeah. So I know you touched on it a little bit. I have a lot of people who follow this who do Kenpo, and they're probably all asking themselves the same question that I'm about to ask you. What style of Kenpo did you end up doing?
So it was Chinese Kenpo, but it was like the school that I came from, like it was more like pretty much like kickboxing. Like we were doing kickboxing. We were wearing like 16-ounce gloves. Pretty much it was taught in it was a guy that had left a big chain of karate schools, and
was it United Studios?
No, I'm not going to. I'm not going
to say it. You don't want to say it. That's it.
No, it was like I'll kind of say it was a chain of schools that came from upstate New York that were very popular during the 80s.
Okay.
And the main instructor turned out to be a pedophile and committed suicide. Yeah. But my instructor had left that organization and stuff, and he was teaching at a fitness center. And he was running a Kenpo program there. So when I went to him at the time, I'd been doing Taekwondo for a long time. I was a brown belt. He accepted me as a student, and I actually did 3 or 4 fights under him. I think 4 fights, kickboxing, like, semi-full contact kind of thing. But that's kind of the trend. But it wasn't just like, just kickboxing. Like we did forms too. Like we did forms and, we did the traditional aspects of Kenpo, but it was mainly like the sparring was pretty much like full contact. We weren't wearing like, we were wearing boxing gloves and learning how to punch like a boxer and a kickboxer. And I ended up getting my black belt under him in 1993. But yeah, it was a good experience. But I also saw, again, it was like part of my journey. I saw the limitations of it because I came from Taekwondo. I love to throw kicks. I saw the value of that. I was like, got to a point where, got my black belt and stuff. And I was like, what else does Taekwondo offer me? I just didn't feel like there was more. It's like, oh, there's one more form that'll get you to your next degree. And there's another form. And it's like, I don't know. I just kind of lost interest in it. So Taekwondo lost interest. And I was like, I saw the value of wanting to know how to throw punches. So it was boxing. And then the extension of that for me was Kenpo at the time. I was like, Kenpo's got great hands. Like I could see that. And I was like, that's cool shit. So, it was like kind of the path that I was on was kind of a weird Kachu Kenpo path in the sense of like, I was kind of doing it. And I remember reading about that back then in Black Belt magazine. And I was like, wow, I wish that martial art existed here because that's what I want to do. And I was even trying to like, create my own little system and stuff and do my own thing. But then when jiu-jitsu came around and I experienced it for the first time again, I was like, this is the deal for me. And the funny thing, like I said, when I went back to my school, I really like kind of threw away all of my traditional martial arts for years, were the point where I hated it for the longest time. But most things in life, it came back around. I see the value of it now. I don't teach a lot. I don't teach forms anymore, but I see the value of teaching people not like my version of like a cyclical drill in jiu-jitsu where there's 8 or 9 moves tied together that to me is like traditional forms. And I treat the way that I like to move like in jiu-jitsu as if I was doing a form. When I'm rolling, like I hold myself, I try to, like I'm not perfect, and my grapple is not perfect, but I try to like move in a way that like feels clean, feels crisp, feels precise. I'm not all crazy and sloppy. So I look at like my own training like as if I was doing a form while I'm rolling. So those concepts that were there early in my training, holy crap, they all came back around. It just, I think and for a while there, I was like, wow, that was crazy that I like treated my traditional martial arts like that. But I needed to kind of just clean that dry erase board, wipe it clean for a little while, and really dive into jiu-jitsu and understand it and get it before I could even find my way back to that stuff.
Well, they always talk about that in martial arts, right? You want to come in with an empty cup. And people
Yeah.
say they're going to do that.
Right.
But if you don't actually do it, all that shit's going to get in the way of learning something new. Which is what I think. And I think that's why it's cool that you have the background you have, because I've met people, and I wasn't sure before I interviewed you, Mike, he might be what I call a stylist. Like,
sure,
they did only one style. That's all they've done.
Right.
And it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to have this conversation with them because they're going to be very much on, well, this is the one style I do, and this is the one. It's almost like a religion. You know?
Yeah, so they can see it through one lens. They can't see it through like the lens of, and it took me a long time to come back around and see it through the lens of like, well, when I was doing Taekwondo, what was in Taekwondo that was actually really great? Like, and what was in Kenpo that was great? What was in Ninjutsu that was great? But what was it lacking too? Because back then they were incomplete martial arts systems. They were missing. We just didn't know it. The world was kind of a little bit tricked by the martial arts, because there was no way to really disprove it back then. It was just like, there was no internet. So it was like, whoever the guy was that they put on the cover of Black Belt magazine was going to be the guy now that we should all follow and go to his seminars. It's the Death Touch guy, the George Dillons of the world.
Was it Stephen Haynes? Who's the ninja? Stephen Haynes?
Stephen Hayes.
That's Stephen Hayes.
Right.
Yeah. I remember he used to take out ads in comic books even. Like, I'd be reading a comic book and I'd see that. But those were the guys. And it was whatever Black Belt magazine told us, and we just follow along.
Well, how else would you disprove it? Because there was no internet. There was no way to go like, go into a school with a video camera and, and do a dojo. Whatever,
oh my God.
Storming.
Back then, right? Like, you walk in, and it's funny, Japan's still the same way. To some degree. Most schools, you go in with your phone and you ask. I asked this at the school that will remain unnamed. I asked, hey, is it cool if I record a drill so I can practice it back at my gym? And they were like, what? I'm like, yeah, no, I just want to know, like, if I can record myself sparring. Is that okay? And they were like, no, you may not. And they were like offended that I asked.
Yeah, that's one of those weird kind of like, like in my school, and listen, everybody, it's like Baskin Robbins. There's flavors for everyone. So, the flavor of my school is that like, like we don't do that. Like, like I don't have like people bound to pictures and stuff like that, or, any of I don't even have flags on my wall, but that's, that everybody's different with that. I just like people just to come in with not worrying about any like dogma or affiliation or indoctrination or anything like that. And just, the mats are for everyone, dude. Let's just come in and train and not worry about like affiliations. I tell my students, all right, guys, circle up. Oh, I tell them, go grab your phones, video this. I video the moves in class and I text them to my students. Like, even when they're not here, I video the moves and I send them to my guys because I know that I'm giving them an amazing tool. Like, here you get to go home and you can watch frame by frame. If my goal is to make you better at jiu-jitsu, right, then why would I not use all of the tools that are available, unless what I'm teaching, I'm hoarding it and keeping it for myself and trying to like, give a little crumbs here and there because I can control it that way. And I can control my students. I can control their pocketbook that way. And and I feel a sense of lack because I don't know enough jiu-jitsu that like I have enough for everyone that I might run out now. Holy shit, what if I run out, right? Jiu-jitsu. It's funny. I had someone say that to me years ago. I put out a lot of, jiu-jitsu content, like moves and techniques. And someone said to me years ago, when I first started putting out content, like, how are you doing that, dude? You're going to run out of content. And for a second, I was like, yeah, that's weird. Is there only so many moves? And how do you run out of content? Like, if you and that's truly like one of the most beautiful things about jiu-jitsu is that it is infinite. Once you understand that framework about how jiu-jitsu works, what you can do in terms of moves and build on it, it's not like I'm coming up and inventing moves, because it's not that. It's discovery. It's like I always call it the Ben Franklin principle. Ben Franklin did not invent electricity. It was a discovery. He discovered what was already there. And it's kind of funny because like on my BJJ After 40 page, you get like, it's man, the judo guys and the jiu-jitsu guys are crazy. Oh man, they're loco. Like if I could put a post up tonight and I'd be like, what's better, judo or jiu-jitsu? All the judo guys will come out, all the jiu-jitsu guys, everybody kind of gets mad back and forth. But it's like we're all just playing with the same, set of tools. Like, no one invents anything because every grappling style starts with the same premise. There's two arms, there's two legs, and there's a neck. It's not like there's 100 styles of humans, or one breed over here that's got 3 arms and they do a different form of martial arts. And then you got the 5-arm guys over here doing a different form of martial arts. It's like we're all doing the same stuff. If you took 2 kids or 2 people when they're young and you said, I want you to, that have never been exposed to martial arts, and I want you to figure out combat. Just figure it out. Figure out what it would mean to fight another human being. And what would they do? They would discover it all. They would figure it all out. And if that was like their whole life mission, they would probably kind of figure it out pretty quick. And they would eventually end up at this like kind of where we are now, maybe not quite now, but a few years ago, sort of this kind of MMA fighter. But then like everything we start to see where it devolves to a point where it starts to shift, where like there isn't a takedown now and there is no striking anymore and grappling looks different. So yeah, it's interesting.
Well, it's funny, like what you just mentioned, there's 2 people that come to mind. Bruce Lee. He said, unless a man can grow 2 more arms and you got a guy with 4 arms, then really you're not going to have a new martial art because if you're working with the same limbs, you're going to get there. Stephen Kesting talks about if you were to get 2 guys and tell them to grapple, it'll take them longer because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. But after about 4 years, they'll probably be at a blue belt level.
Now they would figure it out.
But if you go to now what happens when you go to a system is that now you have a system to work with, so you're going to save 4 years of reinventing the wheel, really. Like at that point, that's why it makes it simpler. You go to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in a year, you can get where you would get in 4 years if you were left to your own devices. Right. So you were talking about putting up content, which I think is interesting because I've had the same thing. This is the place that shall not be named. Where I ended up at an impasse with them was right before I got my brown belt. I was at 4-stripe purple. I told them when I signed up, I already have my own Kaji Kenpo program. Kaji Kenpo has a jiu-jitsu system in there, but it's not Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'm already coaching MMA. Yeah. No problems, they said. No worries. Don't worry about it. It's not going to be an issue. No problem. Until I started posting up content. 8 years later, it became a problem. That was
interesting.
They were like, hey, we showed you that. I'm like, an armbar? No. I mean, yes and no. Like, yes.
Yeah, that's such a funny mindset.
You showed an armbar a few weeks ago. No. If you look at the setup, you didn't even show me that armbar. And the one that got me was when I walked into that place, I literally tapped out the instructor. He had me in side control and I put him in an Americana from side control, bridge escaped out of it, and then finished off. And then I taught that to my students 8 years later. And then he said that he taught me that move and I can't teach that in my program. And that's fun. And I was like, all right, I gotta go. Like, I can't
think if that kind of goes back again to the root of it, which would be like a sense of lack or hoarding my jujitsu. Like, I'm kind of funny about it because when I started putting content out, I was so free about it. I just put everything out. Sometimes I'd put out moves that I hadn't even completely worked through yet and really trained through. And just was like, here, community, like, take this move now, play with it, see what you come up with. Does this look familiar? What can you do with it? I just put out a weird little Americana from side control yesterday. I was teaching a private lesson with one of my blue belts, and I'll let him like get in side control, and I was like, okay, I'll defend, and I want you just to attack and stuff. And all of a sudden, he threw up this weird little armbar. Is kind of weird, like Udigarami, kind of Americana from like when you frame off somebody's hip. It's on my BJJ After 40 page right now. And it was like such a weird little thing the way he did it. I was like, hey, dude, stop for a sec. What was that? And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, hold on, let's unravel this right now because it's interesting what you just did. So we went and got my tripod, threw my phone on it, and I just kind of worked through the framework of it. Like, because you start to know what a move requires. Where's the push and the pull? How am I going to create maximum leverage with minimum effort? And so within like 15 minutes, we sort of unraveled this. Not a new move, because it's definitely a move. Like everybody's done it. And there's probably a million ways that people have set it up. So you're never like really ever inventing anything. You're just discovering it. And we're all going to discover the same stuff over and over again. But it was an interesting move. So I put it online and I asked, have you guys seen this before? And somebody came in and was like, this was the move, or someone else did. And I was like, that's dope. But they were like, this is a different setup though. I'd never seen this setup, but this other guy does this move. So, you know, we're always adding, you know, I think it's a great thing to put stuff online because it adds to the collective of jiu-jitsu. People can take that move, someone sees it, they can go play with it. When I end my videos, I always say, continue molding the clay. Here's the move that as I see it. I'm not giving this to you as a dry piece of like art now that you can't do. You could use it, but you could still actually create from where I'm creating. And I think that's important to kind of pass the technique on to everybody. And the reason someone would not want you to do that is probably because they're trying to control the amount of information that you receive. And and honestly, they probably don't believe in their own jiu-jitsu, and they don't believe in themselves. It's probably, if it goes back to anything, it's a fear. They're afraid of something.
It's a self-confidence thing. And like, so
sure, of course.
Another background, I have a master's in psychology. It's like my other,
cool.
My career.
Nice.
I'm an educator. I'm an English teacher. I moved to Japan, and I ended up studying psychology to teach English out in Japan.
Oh, cool. Right on.
So when I look at martial arts, when I look at everything, I'm always kind of looking at like the psychological aspects of
through that lens.
Yeah, through that lens. And when that instructor said that to me, I spent a lot of time trying to think, is this a conflict of interest? Is this a conflict of interest for him the whole time? And then finally he said, it's not a conflict of interest for me. It's okay, you know, as long as you don't violate these terms. And he showed a contract. He brought he brought in percentages and
my goodness.
And like, yeah.
He really doesn't believe in himself.
Yeah,
like, there's a lot of, but that's some deep-seated fear there. Like that's his own. And again, that had nothing to do with you. It had to do with maybe him, or maybe the people above him. He can't. Maybe he can't be in an association or organization where like he gets to like express himself. So like he's got to be in this kind of weird little trapped little world. And hey, there's people that want that. They want that kind of weird structure. It's not for me. Like I only wear a black gi. That's my jam. Like I only wear black. Dude. I'm like I like to be like Johnny Cash in my gi. You know what I mean? If I had to go somewhere where like they were like you have to wear a blue gi, that shit's not for me. Man, that's just not for me. And like a psychological.
I know you said you're not Kenpo, but it's funny because one of our rules is you have to wear a black gi.
Oh, there you go. Right.
Only wear a black.
With me,
you don't have to, but we put that out there. It's funny though. You said I almost did Kenpo. You sound very Kenpo. Any Kenpo guy watching, he's like, oh, that guy's Kenpo.
Right. So, but that for me was like probably like my ninjutsu back then. I like the black gi. I like to be like the evil guy. You know,
the Cobra Kai.
So you're right. So if I had to be a part of like, because that to me would be like, for me, that would be a red flag for me personally, because I don't like to practice jiu-jitsu that way. Like I like to have an environment where like I could teach a blue belt in a private lesson and I could gain a move from a blue belt. If I was closed-minded, I'd be like, dude, that's not the move we're doing. Don't do that. Or even worse than that, like not say a word secretly, like, take the move now and claim it, or, you know what I mean?
Put it in the curriculum and then tell them you can't teach it.
And then monetize it and try to sue people when they use it, right? Like, well, right. So then, then there's like that. So, but that's not me. Like, I like to just share everything, give out. And it's kind of funny because early on when I was putting out content, there were a couple moves that I was like, I'm not putting this one move out because that's my secret move. And I had a couple moves like that. But, like after a while, I was like, I don't give a shit. Like, what am I holding on to this for? Like, if this can, like, be a cool move that someone else can do, or it inspires them or invokes something in them. Sometimes it might not even evoke something positive in them. Who cares? Like, it's not for everybody. Like, everybody will find kind of their own preferences. And that, again, speaks to the power of jiu-jitsu, is that you can start to develop your own sense of me, your own sense of stylistic preferences, techniques that you like, shit that works for your body, that kind of thing. But if you're in an environment that shuns that and shuts that down and tries to present jiu-jitsu in a way that it's like a one-size-fits-all thing, it's a weird way to look at jiu-jitsu, because it doesn't really work that way, actually, because there's techniques that are not going to work for you. And you can do that up to about blue belt. And that's kind of how I teach it. All my white to blue belts, they all kind of do the same curriculum. but I also help them build who they're going. I tell them I want to help you build who you're going to become in jiu-jitsu. And that happens at purple belt, but you're thinking about that and looking at the techniques at blue belt and saying, this works for my body, but this doesn't. Maybe you're like a 45-year-old white belt. You're a little bit out of shape, and you're trying to learn jiu-jitsu, and maybe you're not flexible or haven't trained in years. So maybe like a triangle choke isn't for you. You still need to know it. You need to know how to defend it and how to do it, but it's probably not going to be your technique. But if you're, so it's like you're going to find the shit that's going to work for you. But if you're in a one-size-fits-all environment, like that's actually probably doing you a disservice long-term more than anything else.
And going back to that story, what ended up happening, even though he said, oh, you don't have to leave the academy. We're going to go back to original agreement. You keep doing what you're doing. And I didn't stop to ask myself, is this a conflict of interest for me? I was so worried about him that I didn't stop to think about me. Is this a conflict?
Right.
For me? And as soon as I thought about that, I said, you know what? I'm about to get my brown belt. And in this place that we shall not name, when you hit brown belt, they start asking you to run your own academy. And if you run your own academy through them, you have to put their logos, you have to buy their mats, you have to buy their gis, you have to go everything through them. They choose your location, they choose all your marketing. You pretty much become an employee of that industry. So I decided to step away at that point, 8 years in, and ended up under a different instructor that gave me the freedom to run my program the way I want. But I think that's something that, going back to your over 40, BJJ over 40, this isn't something that I would have ever predicted happening. 20 odd years, 25-year-old version of me would have never, ever even conceived the idea that at one point I would be asking myself these kinds of questions. Like, okay, now I'm coaching this stuff. There's politics involved. What are the politics and business practices that I have to think about now in my journey? Because again, going back to the original of the story, is all about self-defense, and suddenly we're talking about contracts and business and program development and ethics, and these are all things I would have never even thought about. That now after 40, I do think about a lot, like as I move forward. So that being said, for you made this BJJ over 40 page, right? And you have all these guys coming together. What is something that you wouldn't have considered back then that you think about now a lot, or that you started thinking of over 40? You're now over 50, if I caught that out earlier. What are some of the things that you think about now differently compared to when you started to where you're at right now?
So like, physically you're different. So as a practitioner, as a personal martial artist, I look at what is my role now? Is it for me to get personally better at jiu-jitsu, which I'm always trying to do, but also like as a teacher, like I got to protect my body. My wife reminds me that all the time. We run our academy together. We're both black belts. If she knows that I'm like a little injured, I used to be the worst at this. I had the worst discipline with my body. I'd be like, all right, I'd leave for, to go teach. And I'd be like, this was a few years ago. And I would be like, my knee's a little messed up. She's like, you got to be careful today. Don't train then. Like, don't roll with people. Like, let your knee heal. And then I come home, and I'd be like, I roll a little bit. And she's like, well, how's your body? And I'm like, oh, it's, it's not good. And, and she would get mad at me for stuff like that. She wouldn't judge me for it, but it was like, I had to start to learn how to live in the body that I have now, not the body that I had when I was 25, not the body that I had when I was 30. And there's nothing wrong with my body now. I'm in great shape. I feel physically great, but you do have to be careful, and you got to do all of the right things. And even with all the right things, that can still get weird too. So, and it's going to be different as you progress. It's not like it's over 40. It's like, well, what does it look like from 40 to 45? And you got to kind of really reassess about every 5 years. What's 45 to 50 looking like? What's 50 to 55? So I'm at 56 now. I'm creeping up on 60, which like honestly shocks the hell out of me. It's like, holy shit, dude, I cannot believe I'm 60. That seems so old when I was a kid, but I don't feel like an old 60-year-old. I have 5-year-old twins at home. So, I got little kids running around, so they keep me young all the time. But I also, because of that though, I have to like take good care of myself, and I got to be mindful on the mats. Like the last thing I want is like I can't teach a class now because I get injured, or I can't go. I got to go home now. I can't pick up my kids. I can't do the things that I need to do at home. There's a lot of people that are leaning on me, and so I have to be mindful that, I always say, like, don't become a slave to your ego. Like, let your body speak to you, not your ego speak to you. Because it's easy to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to train like a crazy person tonight. And if you came up from like the old school, like, it was, badge of honor to kill yourself. It was a badge of honor to do every single roll and to never stop and, kill yourself. But now it's like at 56, like, I got to like maybe teach a private lesson tomorrow. So I can roll tonight, but it doesn't need to be crazy. And I can roll. There can be different versions of what rolling is going to mean tonight. It could be some days like really hard, but it might be like maybe with some parameters next time. I'm going to like, maybe the next night I'm going to only work guard and I'm going to stay chill and I'm going to only work with partners that I trust and people that I know that can actually stay within the parameters that we're creating and do things like that. So it can be different as you age. And you need to look at it as a long-term game, like, because you're a brown belt right now, right? Let's say you get your black belt in like 5 years or next 2 years or the next year, whatever that happens to be. When you get your black belt, you're going to want to do all of the cool shit that you've been practicing for years. You're not trying to get to black belt and be crippled and the entire journey like breaks you down. And then you're this messed up black belt who just can't even roll anymore. I've got people I know in my life, friends and stuff that are black belts. They don't even roll anymore. Like to me, that would be like the most depressing thing for jiu-jitsu for me. I can't do that. Like rolling's actually like not just important for me physically, it's a mental health release too. Like I need to roll. Like I know that I need that. When I don't do it, I don't feel like the same person, but I can't like do it every single day. So as I get older, the quantity or like my BJJ medicine has to be distributed in a different kind of way. It can't be every single day. And it won't let me be every single day, but it can be different from here to here to here to here. And I remind my students of that. It's like, don't stay home tonight and not go to class because you're sore. Like come in and do a different version tonight. Come in and stretch, be on the mats, learn the technique, roll one round, whatever you want to do. I'm not here to like kill you. So like, your body better than I do. And that's kind of the big thing is like listening to your body, like not letting the ego take over. And reevaluating every few years to make sure that you're on the path that you want to be on and achieving the goals that you want to achieve, because by the time you get to black belt, you're going to want to do all the cool shit. So you got to stay in the game and you got to stay with a version of yourself in the game that can accommodate who you are in the present moment, not some version from some time in the past.
And the ego, right? So I have a competitive, one of my competitive blue belts who he competes in MMA and he also competes he's very competitive and he's
sure
constantly every 2 or 3 months on the scene, or every month sometimes going out there doing something. And he's always asking me, how come you don't compete? Are you going to compete this weekend? I'm like, nah, man. Like, no, I'm not going to compete this weekend. Right now, like last time I competed, I tore my LCL and I literally saw the number of students drop in both my programs because I was hobbling around trying to teach stuff that I couldn't demonstrate.
Yeah.
So like the goal is not what it used to be. Like it's
right.
Not,
and that's exactly what we're talking about. It's like,
I have trophies. They're there. If you want to hear war stories, I got plenty of them, but I'm not looking to build more war stories. I want to hear your war stories. I want to prepare you for your wars, your battles that you're going to fight. And I know I know maybe you've got this version and it's really easy to get sucked in, right? When you have some young guy, 25, 26, he's in the military, Japanese military. So it's like you have a 26-year-old and you tap a 26-year-old 20 years, you're like, oh yeah, I still got it.
Yeah.
But then it's like, yeah, you still got it. But if you fuck that up, you're not going to have anything.
Right. And even just like evaluating like how you roll. Like I was a very, like, if you could watch like highlight reels on my YouTube channel of me, I was known for cartwheeling over everybody's guard. It was kind of my jam. And it was because when I came back to competing in my early 40s, I competed in every martial art that I've ever done. But I didn't have success in competing in jiu-jitsu in the early 2000s and the late 90s when I was competing. I was okay at it. I would get like second or third place or fourth place, but I kind of choke every time a little bit mentally. So when I came back around in my early 40s, I lost like 50 pounds. I started going to tournaments again. I felt like it was my second win. And I was like, I'm going to do all the shit that I never fucking did before. And one of them was, I remember seeing like, Renzo Gracie doing a cartwheel over someone's guard and pride. And I was like, I sucked at cartwheels forever. Like because the funny story is the first day I started ninjutsu, I walk into this school and I'm like, I'm going to be a fucking ninja. This is going to be amazing. And the instructor's like, cartwheels down the floor. I was like 19 years old. I'd already been doing martial arts. And I was like, I can't do a cartwheel, sir. And so he put me off on the side with a 12-year-old little girl showing me how to do cartwheels. So I had to learn a cartwheel. So when I went back to competing in jiu-jitsu again, I was like, I'm going to do a cartwheel over someone's guard. And I did it a bunch of times. But this version of Mike doing jiu-jitsu ain't doing any more cartwheels over the guard anymore. Like I could still do it. I could stroke my ego and do one, but it doesn't like appeal to me in the same way. I like my jiu-jitsu a lot slower now. I like to slow people down. I hate when I have to rely on athleticism. I kind of get mad at myself when some young guy sucks me into that and I start, my ego gets sucked into it. I'm all spinning around and then I'm all like, oh shit, that's so tiring. But it's way more fun to me to like slow the game down, become more static, squish people a little bit, take away their athleticism, control the outcome in that manner. And even just like a slow death on my submissions where I'm just like slowly squeezing an arm bar, slowly squeezing a choke, and keep myself out of like shitty positions that are not going to like serve my body anymore, and just not do weird shit that like, that could compromise my body. Because just like what you were saying, the last thing that I need is to make it so that I can't teach and train. It messes not just my life up, it messes everybody up that relies on me on the mat and off the mat. So it's like we are not like superheroes, even though like you're in a job as a martial artist that like it's easy to like allow your ego to feel really big and really important, because every day everybody's telling you how cool and awesome you are. Your students come in at the end of the day, you're the best thing about their day. Most times they've been at work all day, they're working their ass off, they can't wait to get you to jiu-jitsu, so they walk in and or whatever martial art you're teaching, but they're excited to see you and they're going to always sing praises to you about who you are. So it's easy to like let that shit become like a big head. I used to think coming up that I was like, oh, all black belts are like in jiu-jitsu are like angels, or like fucking like great human beings and blah, 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 blah. Some are, but some are not too. Like there's a lot of bad seeds out there too. It doesn't necessarily make you a better person. It's going to reveal your character. And sometimes when that character is revealed, somebody could be really good at just shutting that shit off and hiding that for years. And it could just be like, maybe like an evil black belt or something. I don't know. But like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, so,
yeah, we kind of touched on that earlier with your Kenpo story and the guy who was running it and all that stuff, right? So I've heard Daniele Bolelli, right? He has a good quote about how some people feel that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu makes you a better person, or whatever martial art makes you a better person. But if you're an asshole, then you're just going to be an asshole who can do arm bars. It's not gonna,
right. It just reveals character.
Yeah, that's all it does. That's all it does.
Yeah.
Well, we are getting to our wrap up time here.
Sweet, dude.
But before we go, is there anything you want to, a message or anything you want to tell the community? Anything you want to
check our BJJ After 40 pages out. We're on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. Our Facebook is very interactive. We have great posts all the time, and it's a great little community. And it's a place where, people can reach out and ask questions. I'm super available to people. Like if you come down there, you throw me a question, I'll answer it right away. And just come and join the community.
All right, there it is. And that's BJJ Over 40 on Facebook. I'm on there too. I don't post that much, but I am lurking in the comments once in a while. So
all right, cool, man.
And then for the rest of you, Social Gello with Angelo podcast, one of these a week. And catch y'all next time.
This has been a Social Gello production. If you're interested in being on the show, feel free to reach out. Just email me at socialgello@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow me on social media, Instagram, Social Gello, Facebook, Social Gello with Angelo, or follow me on my personal page under Angelo Ferrer. LinkedIn, search Angelo Ferrer. YouTube, if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, make sure to check out my YouTube channel, Social Gello with Angelo YouTube channel. And wherever you're listening, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other platform, make sure to follow and subscribe and leave a review. Thanks again for tuning in. See you next time.